program contains material that viewers may find unsuitable for younger children. A parental control system is advised. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. For a real view, real opinion, and for an honest conversation, it's time to Get Real with Mahieash Johnney. Tonight, coming to you from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Get Real, where we talk to notable newsmakers all around the nation and the world. Now, we've been bringing you since Cyclone Ditwah went away, and we were talking about the recovery phase. We've been bringing you individuals pertaining to that particular subject. We spoke to the opposition, we spoke to economists, and we spoke to various individuals, try to get you a picture as to where Sri Lanka is heading, because Sri Lanka's economy is not exactly very well established, or whether it is in a very good status. Right now, we're trying to figure out a mechanism to come out from the 2022 crisis. And here we are, another crisis. A natural disaster has taken over and it has completely impacted our economy. So how are we going to come out of it? The opposition responded here on the program. Then we had ministry officials coming here and talking about their response. And now, last week, we had an economist as well who spoke about how the recovery phase would impact the current program. And today, I want to get a response from the government itself. And joining me for the discussion is the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga, Abeysinghe. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
So let me start off with the criticism side of things and get that off, because despite the fact that in the public space, we do have heard certain responses from the government to these criticism, but in the English network space, it was not that prominent. So I want to get that response from you right now. The first criticism is that the government was not ready. The government mechanism did not function as it was supposed to function, and because of that, over 600 lives were lost. How do you respond to that?
No, I think, first of all, thank you for inviting, and we have to, my condolences go to the people who lost their lives and their families and everybody who got impacted through Ditwah. I think the structures that how Sri Lanka has built for disaster recovery is not something that happened overnight. So in terms of flood control, the irrigation, the technology, all that is been built over a period of time. And if you really look at the Disaster Management Center, which was originally a unified, separate body, it was brought into under the defense previously. And I think after 3 years only it met last August, the committee. So whatever we have is whatever we had. And to face this calamity in terms of how it impacted, this is probably after 1989, and it was a disaster that happened between about 48 hours. So whether the preparation of such nature was sufficient, I don't think anybody will be ready at this level, because not whether our government, another government, everything is done in base of predicting something. So what we were used to is the monsoon rain, and then the most of the predictions came as about a 200 to 250 fall, and then in terms of the cyclone also, it changed its trajectory. So whatever that took place during those 2 days was beyond certain amount of resources and the control that we had. But in terms of preparation, there's accountability, there's responsibility, there's officials. So when you say government, so there are responsible parties. So what we've seen, what we know is that based on the indications that came from 25th to 6th to 7th, everything was deployed at scale in terms of precautions and preparations. But whether it was enough to cover the entire damage that took place within 24 hours, that is where we see.
I think most of the people on the ground who were affected by this disaster were saying that whenever I think you would have seen in our coverage as well, whenever we go and go into any community and ask, has the government been here? Has the government mechanism has been here?
Is it after the disaster?
After the disaster.
Yeah.
So most of them are saying, no, we have not heard from the government, no preparations.
No, I don't think that's a true statement, because everywhere that is reachable has been reached. There were areas which were not
Are you telling that the entire country was taken?
Country. So when you take entire country, there are 3 places. Now, for example, in the hill country, the issue was access. And if it's come to the lower lands like Kalani Basin, it was again access, right? So everything went under floods on the river, Kalani River Basin. But on the hill country, it was mostly floods plus landslides. So there were instances or places, exact places, remote areas where officials could not reach. But within few days, I personally know that everybody was reached in terms of safeguarding or saving their lives. After that, it was the process of recovery. And in that also, certain areas took a little bit of time, I think 3 to 4 days, to get the rations or water and access.
So, Minister, what have you all learned and what will you all do better, let's say in another disaster? Natural disasters are unpredictable now.
Yeah.
It could happen within months, it could happen within weeks. So from this, what exactly has the government understood? Okay, these are the areas that we had to focus and we got to fix these urgently.
Yeah, I think I am very interested to hear your question to government. We all are citizens of this country. We watched unplanned urbanization. We watched people being placed under mountains. We watched Kalani River Basin being populated while knowing that it's going to go under floods, right? And with all that, we have built this ecosystem which is not conducive to living, right? So now the government has taken a very strong stand that whether it's industries, whether it's people, that they will never be repositioned or given shelter in the areas of risk. So now the role is for the MBRO to ensure that what are the safe places for residency, what are not. So based on that, the learning, not only learning, it's our action now, which has not happened for decades and decades, that we will not allow anybody to live in an unsafe place. That is number one. Second, our environmental and irrigation systems now need to adjust to such kind of rainfall. Now, for example, the higher similar situation or that level of floods has come in 1989. But at that time we had we didn't have this much of urbanization and the population. So it would have come and gone, nobody would have known. But now if you really look at today's, even this floods, we see most of the damaged property and the residents are which were built during last 20 years, right? So this is where the government will now have to ensure, based on the risk profiling of each area, how do you do the urbanization? I think that is the greatest learning, not only learning, but that will be the action that we need to take.
But how would you approach this? Because this particular statement saying that we will not allow citizens to go back into risk area has been coming since the tsunami. So the tsunami is a learning curve there, and we had buffer zones created, and we had all those things implemented. But then poverty takes precedent. When people's lifestyles are not, or livelihoods are not met, they will seek whatever that they can, and they will move into these risk areas.
No, I think
so how do you stop that?
That is the accountability of whoever governed this country. Now I can tell you very simply.
Right now, how would the government do?
So the government now is prioritizing urban and non-urban housing as one of our top priorities. Is whatever the rebuild that we need to do, we need to redesign. I'll give you one example from my area. So I live in my constituent is Kotte. So Kotte has about 1,500 non-suitable houses. So how do you fix it? So we need to figure out fast-track urban living, urban dwelling. Now, as entire Colombo district, whoever got impacted are mostly who got impacted. That means complete damage was this unplanned, non-approved housing, right? So now we took a decision last week with the leadership of the Prime Minister that every divisional secretariat now has to allocate safe land for housing projects.
Do we have that land?
Yes, we do. It's just that what do you compensate? Commercial versus lives. UDA did not prioritize lives thus far. UDA always sold land for business. They never prioritize livelihood. So this is where now we have I would say after disaster we have opportunity to ensure that we look at people's living and living standards as a number one priority in terms of land allocation. Now we need to figure out how do we provide land that is safe, and it can be government land. If you ask, there's enough LRC lands, there's enough lands in the government, and there are even private lands also government could acquire for projects. But this is the priority. I think this whole rebuilding will have to take place in that, but that is not going to solve the issue. But apart from that, there needs to be further constructions in the irrigation system. Now, for example, in the Kelaniya Basin, 1961 plan has been implemented, and from the irrigation department they are successful. That entire project was to ensure Colombo doesn't go underwater. It didn't. But in that program it clearly says Kolonnawa, Kaduwela, Hangwella will go underwater, right? But we never listen to those science. We never listen to those scientific evidence.
So what's the solution now?
So now we need to figure out either now for
because that's a huge amount of population.
Yeah. So now there are two solutions which we discuss. One is that there need to be a particular construction that need to happen in around Hangwella, where the three rivers come and meet Abeysinghe. So that project itself is $538 million. So it has been continuously pushed back because there was no money. Now this comes from the economic issues as well.
Yeah.
Right. That is number one. And then there are 3 reservoirs planned for 3 rivers that coming to the Kelaniya River on top. So that those things has to get now expedited. Now these are long-term projects which been kept on pushed away. And in terms of unapproved dwelling, we have to fix that. So those two on the river, Kelaniya River Basin, I'm talking because I'm studying because I'm Colombo. But similarly, I'm pretty sure there are things that need to take place in the hill country on our waterways and the streams. And obviously, as the President said, we need to really look at which areas that we should reforest and ensure that the hill country is strong enough to hold this amount of rain, and this is going to come again for sure. So now we did not experience a 500 millimeter rainfall within 24 hours in all the areas. Now the cyclone, I was in the one disaster center to watch that, when the prediction was it to come on the east coast and go out of Sri Lanka, but within 2 hours it turned its way into a left side and it came back to the north central and back into the central province. I mean, that was like not predicted at all, even watching those data.
No, but that's the thing, Minister. Now, in the world, those systems are available.
Yes.
And we have been talking about prediction. Personally, what is the public's perception with regard to the Med Department and their predictions?
Yeah.
Nobody believes,
Yeah.
because they say as soon as they say it'll rain, it won't rain, or when it says it'll. Even right now, you said it was supposed to go somewhere else, and it came somewhere else. So these kinds of prediction again comes down to the data fact. And your government, which has been talking a lot about digitalization, has to be put in place into these systems.
I agree.
Is there a focus on that?
Yeah, I agree on this, and there was anyway a focus on this in terms of improving our Met Department data, and then the research data and the climate changes that we. But then the priority based on what the government has as amount of funds that's available is what will get prioritized. But I'm pretty sure after this there will be a reprioritization of funds and the technology that we might have to seek. Now, for example, now we face a cyclone. Now you have typhoons, right? And then much devastating disasters, especially in the southern coast of US, a certain part of Japan, certain parts of China, Philippines. So they built their capabilities to live with this nature. So now it's up to us. Now, I mean, since '89 we didn't had something like this. Now it looks like we are going to have. So now we will have to reinvest in certain technologies and certain processes, certain disaster management mechanisms similar to those countries in order to face these calamities. I think the preparation of the people also is very important. So I think there will, I mean, with these learnings, I'm pretty sure there will be more energy, more funds and more focus will be put on in the disaster management based on cyclonic issues.
I want to talk a little bit more about the rebuilding efforts, but before that I want to get an answer to this criticism as well. The president, soon after the disaster, and the current government promised certain number of funds to be allocated, let's say for recovery efforts, for cleaning efforts, for livelihood purposes. Numbers were just put out. The opposition says you can't basically accommodate all that because the final figure of that and how much of funds we have in the coffers does not match, and this is just another elaborated promise that the government is doing. Is it based on that?
It's not a good what do you call analysis from opposition. We did it based on exact numbers. Now, for example,
do you have the money?
Yeah, so we allocated 72 billion. So 72 billion is enough to give the promises that's been given for this year. Now, for example, the 25,000.
You're talking about 2026?
2025.
Okay, within the end of this year,
you have to spend 72 billion.
Okay.
So in that, it includes 25,000 for every family and a 50,000 for based on the damage for those houses which completely went underwater. And then the disaster recovery process, basically people who are taking shelter and safe houses, there's money for that. And then the industries which got impacted, there's a 200,000 allocation. These are not based on estimates. There'll be cash grants. So I think for this 72 billion is way enough. And
what's the accountability mechanism that these money goes to those people affected?
Yeah, because we have a very good data system. So I can tell you from Kotte my experience. So first we evaluated 1,700 households, and now we did a reassessment. Now it's 1,800. So entire payment is made this month, this week, to their accounts itself, right? So likewise, every district has their the impacted list, and it's happening through government officials, not by political intervention. The Grama Niladhari, Sangvardhan Niladhari and another officer will verify which are the houses that will be, and it is being taken from day one. So we know the quantum. So that's why we clearly say it's 500,000 something, and that multiplied by 25,000, this is the money that we need. So similarly, we went to the Ministry of Finance and said this is the number of estimated industries that got impacted. So we multiplied and we made an estimate. And I think we have more than enough money to pay this 200,000 because I'm getting data. So today we have got about 18,000 records, and after verification before December we will pay that out. So this allegation of whether the government can provide that within this month is those two cash payments. But In terms of the rebuilding, that's next year. I think there will be appropriation.
Will the budget be revised for that?
There will be appropriation bill for that, because we have the opportunity to do that.
All right, let's take a short commercial break. I'm in conversation with Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga Abeysinghe, with regard to the aftermath of the cyclone and exactly the government's response to the accusations and criticism that has been leveled against the government. I was trying to get a response from the minister as well. I want to talk a little bit about the rebuilding effort, especially in the industry sector. What kind of support will go into the small and medium businesses, because that is very vital. That is basically the backbone of our nation. I'll speak about that. Let's take a short break. You're watching Get Real Media. Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real. I'm in conversation with the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga Abeysinghe. Minister, let's get into your ministry, the Ministry of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development. Now, after such a disaster, there are lots of areas which you have to focus within your ministry as well, especially with regard to the industries that have taken a hit. And usually we've seen a lot of support that has been given to the tourism industry when 2019 Easter Sunday attacks came, and then they needed a lot of support to go beyond. And then after the COVID crisis, pretty much all areas were given certain kinds of relief and support. Now, what exactly is the plan right now?
So at the moment, what we initially did was to gather information to understand the impact. So whilst we do it at a detailed level, UNDP is also doing its assessment, because that is where the global funds will get mobilized. So currently what we need to now first do is to get them restarted. That means like get them back on operation. So based on the data that we have received, we see about 30% of the industries which got impacted will take about 1 to 3 months to restart. Because if you really...
What are the categories, Minister?
So at the moment we have got data based on the data that we have received. We have about 18,300 inquiries that has come in. This includes the service sector as well. But from the industrial side, we have 6,300 manufacturing entities, from large to micro it has damage. So mostly the agriculture-based production is what's impacted, and the farms. And if you take manufacturing units, these are mostly like house-based alongside the river what was there. But from the zones perspective, none of our industrial zones are impacted in way. There was one zone that was disrupted due to the floods, but now everything is up and running. So these are mostly industries which were in isolation in areas of the floods. And now what we are trying to do is to help them restart fast. So what government has done for the micro and the small, we are giving a 200,000 cash grant. I don't think that's enough to recover the losses, but at least to restart. It's like, cleaning a house and going in. So apart from that, government has asked, Central Bank has also issued circular to banks to give a moratorium about 3 to 6 months. So that ministry is following up very detailed to ensure that all these entrepreneurs will get a 3 to 6 months moratorium without penalty interest. And then the other one is a working capital loan for about a 3% interest up to a maximum of 1 million for micro. and others they will have to renegotiate with the banks to get a funding at a lower cost. I think these are the two immediate responses that has come through, apart from driving the insurance companies to pay the compensation faster for those who has the insurance. Now, from the ministry side, what we did was we called in the 10 most prominent industries like corporates last week to start a industry recovery program. So this will be a 3-month program where the government and the private sector will join hands to fast track rebuilding process. Now, when you really look at what are the damages, stocks has been damaged. It's a financial damage. But apart from that, the buildings and the machinery, we need to rebuild fast. So we feel that collectively, as the government, as the private sector who's not impacted, can support these large and medium scale businesses to restart. So that is where we are currently focused on. But from agriculture perspective and fisheries, there's a disruption in the supply chain. So we need to see in the short term whether we would import the raw material for the time being and allow these industries to flourish. So these are the few immediate steps we have taken. And
Minister, I want to ask with regard to the industries. Now you said from large to small, micro, medium industries have been affected. One of the things we've seen in the past when there is a disaster, doesn't matter whether it's a man-made or a natural disaster, the first line of attack is when the stocks and the profits get impacted. The jobs are the ones who suffered. Basically, layoffs going to happen in most of these companies in order to basically mobilize the fact, like, you know, so they can handle whatever they have. That's going to hit the unemployment rate again. Have you all assessed anything on
Not
that?
to that level of detail. We have gathered the headcounts of all these 18,000 entities which got impacted. So immediately there will be a cash crunch in terms of how to manage their cash flows and stuff. That is where this 3% loan scheme is going to come to play. But in terms of entirely looking at recovery, so apart from ones who has insurance, we need to figure out how do we prioritize the rebuild fund and the assistance that we are going to get from World Bank and UNDP and those organizations, whether we should prioritize on the machinery, whether we should prioritize in paying compensation for the losses in the stock. But this is phase 2. So basically what we see is majority, I think apart that 70% will start within 14 days of crisis. So most of them have restarted and running, but their losses they have to absorb. And we need to see, based on the evidence that we collect and the estimations that we are going to do, how do we compensate within the next year. But there is no program that is being planned by the government funds, but we have to see how external funds can be used.
In case there's a spike in unemployment, how does the government has a plan to address that?
So I think on the recovery plan, the unemployment can only be facilitated through government grant scheme, which is basically a SWESUMA related scheme. So we might have to allocate a little bit more next year into that. So I mean, we are hopeful that with the negotiation that we are going to have with IMF in January, that our spending percentage can be increased a little bit, because we have saved for 2 years without impacting our debt borrowing requirement. We have a cushion about another 1 to 2% of GDP that we can spend, and we feel that they will allow us to do it in 2026, so that we can do the compensation for both in terms of loss of jobs and also to rebuild industries.
The agriculture sector, you said, mostly impacted by the cyclone, and they are the ones who need a lot of support in order to restart, because that's going to impact the food production as well, and then that will cascade into another issue. What are the steps your industry
So on
has
the
taken?
agriculture piece, I think it's a very clear thing. Most of our agriculture is seasonal. So basically we have to let go of this season. And for all the
will there be a shortage of food?
No, I think the food committee has already approved importation, so there's not going to be a problem in that, in the shortage of food, because we have enough foreign currency food to do that. But from a livelihood of the farmers, there's a very clear compensation package for three types of crops, like rice and maize. They get about 200,000, and then if it's a vegetable, they get about 150,000 per acre. So I think that they can restart. So what we want them to do is to restart their next season faster. So we don't see any issue based on the irrigation damages also, that it will impact the next season. So this season we will have impact, but next season we'll be back up and running.
Would that spike food prices?
I would say certain food is cheaper to import also. So I don't see there will be a shortage in vegetables.
Because I'm asking that question is we are heading for a season as well.
Yeah, I think this December there will be a shortage in terms of certain food, and it will spike certain prices. Even the poultry industry is very much damaged, and the fisheries, it will take a little time to peak. So I think immediately there will be a spike in December. If I don't say that, it will be non-scientific, but I'm pretty sure the food committee took certain decisions, especially last week, to ensure that there is price stability and no food shortage for the festival.
In terms of the other industries, the tourism industry, which is also a big chunk, I know it doesn't fall directly under you, but you have a little bit of sharing of that industry as well. It has been an industry that gets impacted literally in every disaster. Right now also we see a lot of tourists like boutique hotels and these small scale industries getting impacted. What exactly is the proposal there in order to reach out?
So it's part of the rebuild process. I'm pretty sure Ministry of Tourism or Tourist Board will take steps into that. So our data system collected data irrespective of which industry. So we have a very good cluster of tourist industries that got impacted, especially there are multifaceted, like, so if you take, there are certain boutique restaurants and hotels that got impacted, so which need rebuilding, and the transportation sector, especially some of these vehicles which were used to transport tourists have gone underboard, and some got condemned and all that. So there needs to be a special focus on the tourism side. And yet again, I would say, how do we prioritize our rebuild fund, which is, we have collected more than 3 billion now on the fund itself, and there
dollars.
3 billion rupees. And then there will be more funds that will come through the donor agencies after the assessment of the UNDP. So I think that is where we need to take a portion of that to build fisheries, agri, tourism and industry. So I think that's a discussion in January.
In terms of this government's plan in order to bring in economic stability, now it is getting hammered every single time there could be some kind of another disaster that we might be. What we don't see is the preparation side of things, where a portion has been put into, if there's a crisis, okay, here is the fund that we will allocate and we will take it from, and we will replenish and let normal life be normal life soon after an event. Is there a thinking towards that?
No, I think any country has a disaster recovery plan. And
no, but I'm talking about in terms of the funds.
No, so the funds,
that's where it gets stagnated.
So I think funds, it's very interesting how you ask that question, because we know where we were, right? So this is the 25 is the only year.
That's exactly why I'm asking.
The 25 is the only year we started the momentum in revenue collection, and we have beaten the targets. So that is why we are comfortably here today. Otherwise, we would say, imagine we were in 2023 or 2024 and this calamity happened, we would have been dead, right? Luckily, we had 900 billion plus in our kitty, right? Which was mainly used to stabilize the financial market. Now we are releasing funds for the disaster as well. So likewise, we see that the government's ability to have this financial discipline will keep building the treasury fund to ensure that we can absorb these shocks.
Was that amount you saved, wasn't it allocated to something else, and right now you're taking it from there and putting it into this?
No. The 1 billion fund we were clearly using for the financial market stability. So everything was budgeted next year from the revenue that we collect from next year. So 2026 is a clean sheet. That is why we don't want to touch the 2026. So the funds that was allocated for this disaster is between 70 billion to 100 billion. So I think during the 7 days we spent about 11 billion. Now the government has allocated 72 billion, so altogether 80 billion. So that was the bill that was appropriated, passed just before the last session of the parliament. 80 billion has been now allocated to disaster recovery. So this 80 billion came from the funds that was saved.
Utilization of those funds, will you utilize the 100% of it, or will it, the allocation is there, but utilization doesn't happen and it goes back?
No. I think the very clearly this allocation happened from areas which was underutilized. We pulled it into the treasury. So this 72 billion came like that. And this is expected to spend before 31st of December. And I think there's a lot of verification and fast-tracking efforts happening. As a ministry, we have been working tirelessly. My team has been working since the disaster to get to the point where we are. So we are very confident that the 6,000 industrialists who have asked for funds under ministry will get paid before the Christmas. So likewise, every ministry is focused. And I think where we are learning now is we didn't have data. So this is also a good opportunity to have a stronger database, which we started a month ago. We couldn't proceed it further. Now every ministry needs to have this sophisticated data system and the comm system to ensure these can be done efficiently. But at the moment, the government officials are working very hard to get these funds across to people.
One thing, you were talking about financial discipline, but financial discipline comes through accountability. So when there are accountability mechanisms that has been established in order to make sure they monitor it properly and that it goes to the accurate people, it doesn't go into these political, unwanted things, and real people get the money. What are the accountability mechanisms that the government have put in place specifically for this, or maybe in general?
In general, I think what we have been doing is strengthening the government sector. So weak government sector, apart from politics, weak government sector can't do these things in the accountable manner. So we have set standards and precedents and principles where the politics will not get involved in these operations. So it has been adhered thus far. And the government officials has been encouraged, empowered to do this. Where this can get better is where the technology comes into play. Now, for example, I'll give you one example. So my ministry has development officers, 1,700 development officers. Now they are supposed to go and visit all these places, and they don't have vehicles. So only today we got allocation from various departments to give them vehicles, so that they can go and access and do this verification fast. And technology in terms of they don't have an iPad, they don't have anything to do this. So this is where we need to improve the government sector to work efficiently. Currently they are handicapped, but we are supporting them as much as we can. So I think going forward is where I think data, connectivity, technology plus skill levels of these government officials will make a significant difference in managing these kind of situations.
Indeed. Let's take a short commercial break. I'm in conversation with the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga Abeysinghe, with regard to the current situation and how the recovery phase is occurring with regard to his ministry. A little bit more to talk about, but before that, let's take a short commercial break. You're watching it. to get real on the conversation with the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga Abeysinghe. Minister, the final segment, let's talk a little bit about the longer term recovery of this, because these industries keeps getting hammered one after the other. And in your government's plan, I'm pretty sure when you all came into power, you all had a manifesto which you all had a longer term plan within the 5 years you are going to develop according to this particular blueprint. Now, you would have had a ministry per se plan for the 5 years in order to bring these industries from where they were to whatever that you wanted to take them to. How do you factor in, and what exactly is the proposal right now in order to push them, beyond to a position where we can compete with global markets?
Yeah, I think there is no change in the strategy that we've been taking place now. For example, export-oriented manufacturing industries is our priority, and national trade policy is a very important piece that we need to get in by April. So that will allow industrialists to have a lower cost raw material and then be competitive in the area. And we got the government to give us the advanced capital tax facility. So any investment that is investing $250,000 will get that advanced capital allowance. So there's an incentive for that. And there's a huge drive for FDIs and Port City. So based on those trajectory, I think we are still on track, and the actions to be taken place from January onwards. And I think from a SME side also, there will be a very comprehensive approach to it, because we are combining IDB, NEDA and SED organizations to become one, and there will be one common platform for industrial development. From a capital and the market access point of view also, global market access, there's a team who's driving new FTAs and reviewing FTAs. These are fundamentals for us to grow. And looking at the supply chain is what we were planning to do, because supply chain strength is what's going to give us what our exports to look like. So we had a 7% export growth. For example, certain industries jumped very high, like coconut. So they, from 850 million, now they have already crossed 1.1 billion. So I think likewise there are sectors that we can push fast. So there are strategies around that, like the boat building, this tourism, IT likewise. So apart from that, with this, what happened to us, what we are realizing, or we knew but we didn't prioritize, is the risk mitigation, business continuity planning. That kind of stuff has not been there in the country. So Ministry of Industries will be launching this in January for every industry based on where they are, to understand their supply side shocks, natural disaster shocks, labor shocks and the global market shocks, to have a BCP, business continuity planning, as a tool for industries, where that tool can be shared with the government also, that the government knows these industries are vulnerable in these areas. So if we really put that, I think it's needed for the entire country, but at least for the industries, we know where the vulnerabilities are. Now, for example, I'll give you, the ones that who got flooded doesn't have flood cover.
Yeah.
No flood cover, because the insurance companies categorically say, if you are based alongside the river, we will not give. Now, but they have taken the risk and operated. Now everything is gone. Right? But as a country, we need to figure out if there are industries that need to be established near the rivers, how do we have a fund? How do we have an insurance scheme that they can contribute with a premium or something and cover it? But these are things that will come new. As you correctly said, we don't have a bad bank concept, right? So every time we get into a disaster, we expect the commercial banks to step in, and it's very difficult for them. So other countries do have that. So we don't have at a disaster. How would the general rules and regulations will apply? Now, for example, maize. Now maize entire crop is damaged, but still the law says you can't import maize. Now there should be SOP that triggers on that particular day when the rain comes, the thresholds of import to increase and approvals to be granted, that you don't have to go behind agriculture department to get this done. So likewise, we will have to figure out at a disaster. Now we have a lot of learnings. So I think that business continuity planning will be the new mindset that we will bring in from the Ministry of Industries.
With regard to reaching out to certain countries, now you mentioned about the port city, and there's a drive to get businesses into it. Successive governments, I think now 3 governments or 4 governments since the port city was open, it has now come and become your baby. Now you have to somehow make use of that particular land, despite whatever the history of it is. Now, how do you do that? Because we still don't see structural elements of it coming up or real investments being poured into it. Visually, we don't see it. It still becomes like a big land that is there right beside the capital of the country, the financial hub. But still, it has not been functioning.
I think,
now, how do you get these countries to look into this in a different perspective?
So I think 2 things. One thing is that why nobody invested till last year was that they didn't have the economic stability and the forecastability of the country, which is very fair by the industries. And then we had 9 months of ambiguity about taxation and the benefits. So now it's sorted also. So we are happy to say that we have already signed up previous discussions, 1.2 billion worth of investments into the port city, which will start building in 2026. At the same time, there are about...
From where?
So there are 4 companies which there was a bill that was passed. I can't remember the names. So one for about 600 million, and one for about 300 million, another one for about 150. Altogether 1.2 billion. So they will...
Are these Chinese companies? Or?
Not all Chinese. And so then apart from that, I think there is about 5 big projects in the funnel. I met the team about a month ago. So they are working very hard. And they also believe the current given incentive scheme is good enough to attract. So as we can see more effort by the port city team is put up, this rebuilding process, which we can also use, because government president clearly said that we will have few funding rounds across the globe, and with that collectively we can go. And the 2026 Expo is planned. It's a huge one. So we are expecting about 1,500 investors and buyers to come to Sri Lanka in June. So that's been well planned across the globe with the Foreign Ministry and Ministry of Industries and the EDB together. So these are few events and activities that will bring more attraction to Sri Lanka in 2026. How
do you address now countries like the United States, even the US Embassy here put out a statement saying doing business in Sri Lanka is very cumbersome, a lot of red tape. Have you all addressed that?
Yeah, so that is why the investments are put in place. Number 1 is to digitize, and the other piece is a single window trade portal. We allocated about 1.2 billion rupees for that. The taxation systems are getting simpler with the tariff policy. So these are the kind of red tapes we are talking about. So single window trade is going to be a big game changer. And if we can get the single window investment portal done, I don't know, it will take 1 or 2 years, but I think those are 2 key things that we will push us in the ease of doing business index. So what we've got done is the policy consistency. Now the investment policy is clear. Before April, there will be the Investment Promotion Act, new one will come into play. Investment Protection Act will come to, that will set the base for investment. So this will put us few notches in the ease of doing business. And then we have a problem with the arbitration. I think these are few things that is on the pipeline, but different teams are working on those. I think getting ourselves up on the scale of the ease of doing business index, which we are at 99, is the goal, and that's we should watch for, and the success of the government will depend on how fast we reach the ladder.
Very quickly, Minister, with all this, it's good that we do it, but if the world doesn't know that we have done it, which basically means we have to go and market ourselves, it's utterly useless, because we have done a good product and nobody knows. Now, how you are actively also speaking to these countries around the world, like especially why I'm asking this is the United States, there's a new ambassador that's going to come next year. And when he was giving his testimony, he specifically said that now US businesses are going to take a look at Sri Lanka and they are taking an interest in that, and that they will funnel some investments here. What exactly is the conversation there? Is that
no,
really
I think not only US, I think all of the foreign counterparts are discussing about investments, because Sri Lanka poses still a great opportunity, especially trade, because we are the closest to the West. And then our economic zone between India and Sri Lanka, I think those two things together will continue to bring investments in. But in terms of what's really required is the policy on land, policy on the foreign exchange policy in terms of repatriation and dividends, getting venture capitalists in. So I think there are few things which is in the pipeline that will get these things done. So we are in the continuous negotiation, and every time we meet these people and the investors, there have been a lot of visits this year. There has been a lot of interest, because there's trust that there is no corruption that will take place beyond, what's bureaucratic and all that. There will not be influence. So when the policies are set in place, we are telling them these are the things we are doing, and by next year end things will be in play. So I think that's the trust and the confidence we are giving all these investors and the potential countries, and we are very much working very close with all the ambassadors and the embassies.
All right, Minister, we have to leave it at that. Thank you very much, the Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development, Chathuranga.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mahieash.
Well, that's all the time we have for you tonight. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back again next Monday with another guest that matters to you. See you then. Bye for now.